Well, we are talking with the great Gary Burton today, and it's certainly my pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with Gary Burton. Gary, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm here in New York, getting ready to start our week's engagement at Birdland, in fact.
Oh, great, great. So, you know, a fellow Floridian of yours, who you may know, Mike Herzon, just said when I told him I was going to talk to you, he said, well, ask him how he's enjoying the weather. So, but you're not even in Florida, though.
No, I literally met one of the few flights that came into New York on Sunday was the one I was booked on. Otherwise, I would probably still be waiting for a seat on a plane.
Right, yeah.
To this day. But it's, I'm here amid the snow, and although they're clearing it up pretty well as of today, but it's taken a few days. But I'm here, staying snug in my hotel room so far.
Okay. Since you mentioned that you're going to be at Birdland, who's the group you have with you?
Well, this is the Mack Avenue Super Band.
Oh, you're there with them too. Okay.
Yes. This is the beginning of a month-long tour, and then it picks up again in early April for another couple of weeks out on the West Coast. But we're starting off with the week here at Birdland, and then we're doing cities all up and down the East Coast and the Midwest and Upper Midwest. It runs through, late February. And the group is basically Christian McBride's rhythm section, his trio.
Right.
With Christian Sands on piano and Carl Allen on drums.
A great trio.
And then the front line is two recent Bostonians, Sean Jones on trumpet and Tia Fuller on alto saxophone, who are now also teachers at Berklee, and myself. So that makes it our sextet. And this will be the lineup for the tour.
Okay, and the group is working its way to Boston early in February.
Exactly. We're coming up next week. The concert is at the Berklee Performance Center on February 4th.
Right.
On the Thursday night, and then we go on to D.C. the next day.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what the Mack Avenue Jazz Band is.
Sure. Well, this started as an annual live recording concept at the Detroit Jazz Festival for the last 3 years, and kind of an all-star group of Mack Ave artists has been presented at the festival and recorded and put out a CD. And I'm on 2 of the 3 that have been released so far. And this year, the record company got the idea to, well, instead of just doing the one concert at the Detroit Festival, let's see if we can put together a tour. So we recorded this past September, and that CD is just now being released.
Good. It's a nice CD, very nice CD.
Thank you. And we're now going to tour for a month around the U.S. to both promote the CD and promote the label and so on. I think these days every record company is doing whatever they can to get out before the public, because there's so many different competing ways for people to get music these days. And Mack Ave has always had a big belief in the value of live performances. They've recorded quite a few, and I think this is an extension of that philosophy.
Right. Now, how does it work where Warren Wolf played the vibes on the one year that you weren't there and you were on the other 2? Is that just scheduling?
That was scheduling.
Okay.
The day that the concert was scheduled in Detroit, I was actually already scheduled to play the Chicago Jazz Festival.
Oh, okay.
So I missed it by 1 day. One year we were both on the record. In fact, we even played a duet of 2 vibraphones together.
Oh, yes, that's right. I've forgotten that. Yes.
On one of the all-star records. So it's generally been a bit of a shifting lineup from year to year based on people's schedules and even new artists that had come on the label, in recent years and so on. They passed it around, and even on this tour, there are some substitutions taking place where people had conflicts during the month and a half of touring. And in fact, I will miss the last 5 or 6 concerts because I've been voted or selected, however they do it, to be one of the NEA Jazz Masters this year. And I have to go to Washington to the Kennedy Center for this big event and concert and presentation and so on in the first week of April.
Now, you make that sound like that's a unpleasant duty. I can't imagine that's what you're thinking of.
No. I was slightly sorry that it conflicted with the last dates of the tour. I was looking forward to managing to do the whole thing, but they are bringing in Kirk Whalen to sub for me on those last concerts out on the West Coast. But
he's on the CD also.
He's on the CD also, but he isn't on the tour, or most of it anyway. But the Jazz Masters thing, it really for me came out of the blue, because you don't know. It's not like you can apply for it or anything.
Right,
it's kind of a secret panel that accepts recommendations from various sources. I don't know who. And they pick a few people each year to be honored. And this year, interestingly enough, it's me plus two very similar artists, Archie Shepp and Pharoah Saunders, both tenor sax players out of the John Coltrane School of playing it. And even the guy from the Kennedy Center, but just between the two of us and your listenership, said how weird, that they picked two almost identical kinds of players of all the possibilities they could have chosen. It seems strange because he has to organize a concert featuring the music of the honorees and bringing in players who we've worked with in the past, or that would have a connection to our past. It's sort of like a miniature version of the Kennedy Center honors, to be honest. Is how it looks to me, and it is at the Kennedy Center as well.
So do you play with? Will you play there with your regular band, or will you have an all-star band or something for that performance?
Well, I'm actually going to play at the Kennedy Center the day after our Boston concert next week.
Oh, okay.
The Mack Avenue group flies down to D.C. on the 5th of February and plays there as a part of our tour. But at the NEA Jazz Masters event, we don't play. We sit in the audience like the guests at the Kennedy Center.
Okay.
And so we're just, observers as they do a sort of a "This Is Your Life" kind of thing on stage. And that'll be an interesting switch, I have to say.
Right.
I'll be interested to see what that feels like. I did participate one year in the Kennedy Center honors when the honoree was Lionel Hampton. And they wanted to, of course, bring in some artists that would reflect on his career. So they asked me and Milt Jackson to both come in and play, which we did. And there was Hamp up in the audience watching, and I'm sure he was dying to get on stage himself, because that was his nature. As one critic once mentioned, that Hamp did not go gracefully into the wings. He was one of those players you couldn't get off stage, and he would play till 3 in the morning if he had the chance to, and so on.
Do you have any idea who's going to be playing for you there?
No, it's a big secret. I am assuming that Warren Wolf is a strong possibility because we're friends, and Warren actually lives near Washington. He's in Baltimore, so I suspect he might do it. And they asked for a list of names of people that I've played with over the years, which I provided, and I'm pretty sure they would ask Julian Lage, the guitar player who I've been playing with for the last decade, and who knows who else they might get. I mean, it just depends on what availability offers when it comes to many players who are touring at that time of the year.
Were both Julian and Warren your students?
Well, yes, in a way. I mean, Julian was not a student at Berklee until after I left, but I started playing with him when he was about 12 years old.
Right.
Saw him on a television show and was kind of struck by what a mature kind of player he was for a little kid. And I actually got his phone number and called up and talked to him and his parents and invited him to play with me at a conference event that was taking place in California near where he lived. And that went so well that we started playing occasional gigs together, kind of low-key affairs here and there, a few times each year. And when he was 15, we made our first record together and started playing together more regularly. And he's now 29 and just has a new record coming out himself that is really terrific. I just heard it the other day for the first time. Warren was a student at Berklee while I was there, and I wasn't heavily involved in working with him personally, but was well aware of him and got to know him well. He also plays piano fairly well.
He plays drums too. He played
that
live,
I didn't know.
He played live performances on my show, I believe, at different times on all three of those instruments.
Oh my goodness!
Right.
Well, very versatile guy.
Right. Yes. Do you play drums?
Excellent player.
No,
I never did. I played snare drum in the high school band, so I could go on the football trips with the rest of the kids. But other than that, I never played a drum set. My other instrument, as it were, was piano. You know,
okay.
The vibes in the piano are pretty similar. The keyboards look the same, and you think the same way. Drums is actually a pretty different instrument, and people are always saying, oh, if you play vibes, you can play drums. And actually, well, the only thing you have in common with those two instruments is you hold sticks.
Right.
But
everything
else is different.
I think of Alan Dawson. That's
Yeah. In fact, when I came to Berklee in 1960 as a 17-year-old student, Alan was the drum teacher for the school. It was very small then. They had one teacher for each instrument. And he had just bought a set of vibes and was starting to learn how to play. So right away he said, look, I'm in no position to start teaching you the vibes at this point. I'm just getting started myself. So for a year I took drum lessons from him just to see what it was like. And I also took piano lessons as well from one of the piano teachers. And at the end of the year, I definitely felt the kinship with piano and dropped the drum idea. And no regrets there. I'm definitely a keyboard kind of player.
Right. Okay. And when was it you said you started at Berklee?
1960. That was, the school would have been 15 years old at that point, and the enrollment was about, I'm going to say, 120 students in one little brownstone house, which is now Charlie's restaurant on the corner of Newbury Street in Gloucester.
Was it called Berklee then, or was it Schillinger?
No, it was called Berklee. It had changed the name about 5 years earlier.
Okay.
I know originally it was Schillinger House, and then after Mr. Burke bought the school, I think one of the provisions from the Schillinger estate was that they rename the school something else.
Oh, really?
It would no longer be Schillinger system that was being taught. And the school would obviously be going in a different direction musically. And now that's the story I heard. It could just as easily been that Mr. Burke wanted his own name on the school, although he named it after his son. Lee Burke. The Berklee came from the reversal of Lee's name, which was forever an embarrassment to Lee.
Is that right, really?
Yeah. Constantly in conversations with people, like people would suddenly look at him and say, "Wait a minute, Berklee, Lee Burke. Wow, it's your name." So anyway, little bits of history.
Right. Yeah. So how long were you a part of Berklee in total, including your days there as an administrator, or was faculty and administrator?
I did different things. I was there as a student for 2 years, and then moved to New York and started, working and building my career. I went back in '71, and I was there 33 years.
Really?
First 10 years as a teacher, 10 years as a dean. I was the dean of curriculum. That was my title, and then 10 years as the executive vice president. And that last phase, I ran the day-to-day operations of the school, and while Mr. Burke worked with the trustees on fundraising and managing, that part of the institution's needs and so on. So I kind of was all over the map during the time I was there. And just to be clear, I retired from the school in 2004 and moved to Florida. And so I've been, living in the land of sunshine,
right,
except for this tour this month, which goes everywhere from Minnesota to Wisconsin to you name it. Every cold weather city in the country is on the schedule.
Right.
I got into this project.
Tell me about some of the changes you saw at Berklee throughout the years.
Yeah, well, of course, the school grew steadily. When I left as a student, there were maybe a couple of hundred students enrolled. When I came back 10 years later, there were about 1,000. And the school had moved into a hotel that it had purchased, a 6-story hotel. And a few years later, they bought another hotel and doubled in size. And by the time I left in 2004, the enrollment was up to 4,000, which is where it is today. They capped the enrollment finally and decided this was a maximum workable number. And the school has continued to add programs over the years. And a couple of the big shifts came while I was there. One was making a big effort in music technology. Now, today we think of computerized recording studios and computerized instruments, synthesizers, and so on as being pretty much standard, equipment in the music business. But 20 years ago, it was very controversial and even considered, total heresy by many musicians to even allow something like a synthesizer into the room. But we kind of made this decision based on a lot of our younger faculty that this was, where the future was going, and we wanted to be there. So that was a big change that came about. The other really big one was expanding our concept of what constituted commercial music. The school was founded originally to train people for real life jobs in the music business. Everything but the symphony. That is, jazz bands, commercial bands in hotels and ships, Broadway theater bands, studio musicians, all kinds of commercial applications for music. And that worked well up until the mid-'60s into the '70s, when popular music took a big turn toward the rock area, and this was an all-new thing. And by the late '70s, by the late '70s, there was again, we saw in our younger faculty and our incoming students growing interest in not only learning about jazz and film music and so on, but also learning about rock. And so we started adding courses and opening the school up to that, and that also was controversial. Today, of course, it represents a big piece of Berklee's musical offerings, and it's been hugely popular with young musicians around the country, around the world, who come to the school. Of course, now other colleges also have expanded into this area of music, but we were by far the pioneer of in both of those areas.
You talked about electronics and technology. I think of a vibes player like Roy Haynes, who uses a lot of attachments on his vibes. Do you do that, or have you ever done that?
I experimented with that in its infancy, back in the 60s, when the first amplified instruments and synthesized instruments were very primitive, and there were various attempts to apply this to the vibraphone. And it was interesting, but kind of clunky, and it didn't really work for me.
Okay.
So after a few years of messing around with it, I gave up on that and just decided, my future was playing the instrument in its acoustic state. And of course, it became more sophisticated technically as the years went on, and players like Mike Minieri was another one who used a lot of electronic applications on the vibraphone. Kind of depends, I guess, on your vision of music as well. Where you see yourself in this range of how traditional, how modern, and so on. So I think we all kind of gravitate to what works for us the best according to our vision.
Right. We talked a little bit about your work with the Mack Avenue Super Band. What about your work under your own name? What's new?
Yeah, my own band has for the last 5 years almost now has been a quartet with Julian Lage on guitar. And this past year, I took this year off for the most part. I've always wanted to take a step back from constantly touring and working and recording and everything, and catch my breath a little bit. I did 2 major projects with Pat Metheny during the year, and I did this recording at the Detroit Festival for Mack Avenue. But otherwise, I took some time off just to enjoy life and so on. And so I haven't played with my group since the end of 2014.
Oh.
And this year I'm doing this Mack Avenue tour, and I have 3 other projects, one with Chick Corea in the fall, another one with Makoto Ozoni in Japan at the end of the year, and a trip to Portugal with some Portuguese musicians that are friends of mine that I'm doing in the spring. So my year is actually, fairly booked up at this point, but none of it with my own band. They're all kind of special projects. So not at this point, I'm not sure when I do put a group together again, whether it'll be the same players or something new. I may have a new record project underway by that time that would point me to touring with a different lineup. But we'll see.
What is the latest recording that you have out under your own name?
The latest one is called I'm blanking out here. This happens when you get to be my age. Guided Tour. I kept wanting to say Tourist something or other. Guided Tour is the name of the record, and it came out at the end of 2013, early 14. So I'm due for another record, but like I say, I've taken this year off, and so the schedule is a little behind at this point.
Do you have any plans, or are there any plans to record any of these other projects that you just mentioned too?
Not at the moment. The things with Chick are just a few concerts in Europe, and then some time at the Blue Note in New York to celebrate his 75th birthday.
Right.
So we won't be really trying to work up new music for these dates. And with the 2 of us, which we've recorded, I don't know how many records now, 6 or 8 over the 44 years we've been doing this. About every 5 years or so, we get motivated enough to work up new music and do some short tours to kind of get it in shape. But maybe that will come another year or 2 from now, I guess.
Okay. The last time I talked to you, I think it was when you did a live performance at Scullers. You were doing some online teaching. Are you still doing that?
Yes, I am, as a matter of fact. It's been about 5 years now. One of the last things I was involved in at Berklee when I was retiring was to start this online school. I got the idea from looking at other online, programs that were starting at colleges around the country, and I decided that maybe music would be a possibility, even though at first it looks illogical. And I convinced, the board of trustees at Berklee to come up with the money to start the program, to hire people and rent some space and so on. And I had hoped that it would break even within maybe 5 years. That was the game plan. It not only has done that, it's been like 10 or 12 years now that it's been up and running. It's become hugely successful, and they offer well over 100 different courses and majors and so on in the online school. So I got interested in being personally involved about 5 years ago and created a jazz improvisation course that I continue to do. I have anywhere from 20 to 40 students each semester, and we meet once a week for a video conference session, which in fact will be Thursday this week here in New York. And I can do it from wherever, as long as I have Wi-Fi,
Right.
I can do my weekly chat sessions with the students. And then I grade their assignments, which I did this morning for this week's assignment. And so it's kind of flexible enough for me to be able to do it wherever I travel or whatever I'm doing. And I really enjoy keeping my hand in the teaching experience. I continue to learn from the students, which was always the case.
Now, you were also teaching, was it through edX or a MOOC class where you had thousands of students, some outrageous number?
That's still going on, and it's with Coursera, and I got the recent tally, which surprised me. It was over 10,000 students.
My goodness.
This current offering. They offer the course about 4 times a year, and it runs for 5 weeks. And the first time it was offered, it was 40,000 students, which just astounded me.
Sure.
And I hadn't paid attention in the last 2 years now that they've been doing it, and they sent me an email showing the breakdown of how many people had signed up, how many were still were completing the program, how many were still going through the lessons each week. And of course, naturally, in these free courses, a lot of people just sample it to see what it's like.
Right.
And so the retention rate, is one measurement of how well the course goes over. And in my case, about 25% of the students have stayed with it to the end, according to what they sent me, which is pretty high, actually, for Coursera courses. But I'm still surprised at the number. I mean, who knew there were that many thousands of aspiring jazz, musicians out there, finding their way online to a course, deciding to take it. I mean, I know it's from people from all over the world and all that, but the numbers just amaze me. I had no idea there was that many people out there interested in this.
I took a class maybe last year, a Berklee class through edX with George W. Russell, Introduction to Music Theory, too. Very good class, too, yeah.
Good, great. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. I guess we... I know one thing I meant to say to you earlier, too. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was just 3 days ago.
Right, yeah.
As a matter of fact, turned 73. Still seems hard to believe that I've been around that long, and that I actually started, I made my first record in 1960, so what is that, 53 years ago. Wow. Just hard to comprehend those numbers.
Right, yeah. But you're still going strong, so that's a blessing.
Still at it.
Right, yeah.
Got my fingers crossed. I got a phone call, phone message from Terry Gibbs, who's in his 90s, who's still hanging in and still plays some, and so on. There's something about longevity with vibraphone players. You know, Hamp made it to 95, and Red Norville made it to 91, and so on. It's you know, we seem to hang in there. It's hard to get rid of us.
That's good. That's good. That's a good thing. You know, I only met Hemp once. I was asked to host a concert in Providence, and when I got there, they asked me, "Well, do you want to meet Lionel Hampton?" I said, "Sure." So they took me down into a room where he was, and when I looked at him, my first impression was, "This guy is very old." I mean, you know, which of course was obvious, but I didn't, you know, I hadn't thought of it, but he just seemed like he was very old. Well, they walked him out on stage with a man on each arm, but then when he got to the vibes, he just played magnificently. Yes,
this was true. The last years, it was amazing. I would see him backstage on these rare occasions. Our paths would cross, and he looked like, you know, he was practically asleep.
Right.
And it was hard to carry on a conversation. In the middle of talking to me, he'd forget who I was briefly, and then remember, oh yeah, Gary, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, it was, but then the minute he hit the stage, he would come alive and put on a big long show, dancing around and waving his arms and singing and hooting and everything. And you know, that was, he lived for the gig.
Right,
and,
right.
He had 3 strokes in those later years, but just kept coming back, and you know, right to the end.
Right.
An amazing character.
Now, of course, he was the opposite of what we talked about earlier. We talked about vibes players who also played the drums. Didn't he play the drums first and then come to the vibes? Yes.
He did. In fact, a lot of times that's how it starts. People start on drums and then get introduced to the xylophone or the marimba or something, and then end up on mallet instruments, you know, next in their playing experience. Not many people start on the vibes. I was one. Bobby Hutcherson also started on vibes, but particularly in the early generation, Bill Jackson started on guitar and was also a singer. Almost all the early vibes players started on something else before they discovered the mallet instruments, which, you know, weren't easy to find. They were vibraphone was only invented in 1930 and wasn't that well known for another 20 years or so. But yeah, Hamp started on drums, and he credited a nun at the Catholic school he went to as a kid to introducing him to the xylophone.
Really?
And making him practice. And so by the time he launched his career, he was playing drums in a band backing up Louis Armstrong.
Sure, that's what I remember. Yeah.
Out in Los Angeles, the Les Height orchestra band. And he had a set of vibes next to the drum set that he would tinkle on every now and then. And Louis kind of was intrigued by this and said, "Bring that to the studio tomorrow. When we do this recording session." So he made the first record ever of the vibraphone, and it was U.B. Blake's song, which is title again is escaping me, but it was Hamp made the first, you know, vibraphone record with Louis.
That's great.
Two tracks, you know, an A side and a B side.
Gary, could you just give us the information again on the Mack Avenue Super Band concert here in Boston, please?
Absolutely. This is the Super Band. We're a sextet with Sean Jones trumpet and Tia Fuller saxophone and myself on the front line. And then Christian McBride's rhythm section, his trio, Christian Sands on piano and Carl Allen on drums. And we're playing at the Berklee Performance Center Thursday, a week from tomorrow, February 4th. I think it's 8 o'clock, but you might need to check that to make sure.
Okay, all right. Gary Burton, thank you very much, man. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure, Eric. Always good to talk to you.
Right.
Okay, take care.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye now.
Bye.